Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're viewing from. Welcome to the next episode of the XSCALE series, part of our Meridian Point podcast. And in this one, we're going to be covering principles 11 of both permaculture and ecosystem thinking. So if you're with us for the series, we've spent probably 6 months, I think, on these principles. I think we started about 6 months ago. We cover a set of principles each month. And now today we're on the last two. I'm actually going to miss talking about these because these are quite profound. Permaculture, especially, I've learned a lot. I don't know about you, Glenn, but I've learned a lot about permaculture principles. It's gotten me really interested in learning more, even more, yet more about it. But anyway, without further ado, we're going to be talking today about, as I mentioned, principles 11 and 12. So we'll start with principle 11, permaculture principle 11. And what it says is use edges and value the marginal. And you know, again, a sort of a subheading says, don't think you're on the right track just because it's a well-beaten path. Sounds like something you'd get in a Chinese fortune cookie. Huh, Glenn?
I agree, and I like this one. That resonates with me.
Can you describe it a little bit in your words? What does this mean to you? Use edges and value the marginal.
Following a well-beaten path, particularly if you're a business, is just engaging in a commodity market. Everybody's there; they're beating each other up, trying to go and save a few pennies. That's not where growth is. That's not where profit is. You need to go and get off the beaten path. The image that I have in my head when I was looking at this earlier today was imagining an ecosystem as kind of a field with all sorts of things interacting with each other. Look, the edges are where you want to go. That's where you're going to expand. Possibly in the middle, there might be an unserved niche. But in terms of growing the ecosystem, you got to look on the periphery, and you've got to look for things that are not being serviced, that the ecosystem is moving around. So this principle resonated with me.
What are some examples that you can think of in terms of business applications of this principle? And you can't use Apple.
Can I use Tesla?
Yes, you can use Tesla.
Thank you. I'm quite intrigued by the work that Tesla is doing with the Optimus robot. They have gone and looked at robotics. Robotics currently are very tightly, they can do some wonderful things, but they're highly programmed for a very specific task, sometimes to like the thousandths of an inch or millimeter or whatever. What Tesla is doing with their cars is they have a general purpose engine that is looking outside of the car in real time, seeing objects, seeing other cars, seeing children, road signs, and so on and so forth, and they're responding in real time to that. So Tesla has that idea in their toolbox, and they also have this humanoid robot that they're working on. They're going to go take the technology from their cars and put that into the robot, real-time sensing based on whatever's in front of you. And there's a video out there on the robot, it's called the Optimus, picking up an egg, which requires some precision and some delicacy, and putting it in the center of a container. I don't know how general purpose that is, but that's certainly where they're going. And that's a completely underserved niche. And this is going to be a massive market. Tesla figures it's going to be bigger than the car market.
Yeah, I agree. And I think these robots will eventually be used in the factory version 3 that they're designing right now, Tesla is designing right now. And it all grew out of an idea in Elon Musk's head, you know, where basically if you can cast an entire half of the vehicle and slam them together like they do for toy cars, then it would result in, you know, much fewer parts, fewer welds, higher quality, of course, a lot cheaper to produce, right? And these robots can then do the fine work of the welding and, you know, installing the seats and whatever else they have to do. And of course, that's going to put humans out of work, maybe, but it would create probably new jobs. In another area that I think is in line with this principle from permaculture, using edges and valuing the marginal, is more, I would say, a better example. I don't know if it's a better example. Just another example is a company called M-Pesa, M-Pesa. They're a money sending financial app, kind of like Venmo over here. and maybe other parts of the world as well. But it's primarily serving underserved populations in Africa, people that don't have bank accounts, but now they can use this app on their mobile devices to send money to people, transact with people without a bank account. They can receive money, send money, all that stuff. And it's being used by 50 million people around the world, I guess mostly in Africa. But it's an example of how ecosystem thinking and the ecosystem principle for this is, do you remember the words for it? I do. I have it right in front of me. Innovate value streams. Underserved markets and spaces between existing market segments are where opportunities for new growth and efficiency occur. And that's just like in permaculture. It's the intersections where if you are able to make use of those intersections between ecosystems, it's going to be fertile ground for new opportunity in nature and also in business. Anything to add?
Or other not very developed countries, we have a chance to go and do it all over again. We don't have to have banks, as M-Pesa has proven. All of the, and I'm struck by something else from the third world. Traditionally, we have built a phone network. They're skipping that step completely. They're going straight to cellular.
Yeah.
And actually, well, now we're in the 2020s. Well, why not go straight to Starlink? skip even satellite networks.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I suppose AI is another niche that was a niche, but now it's exploding, right? It's now exploding to the point where it's connecting different ecosystems, different value streams through the power of artificial intelligence. And who knows where it's going to go? But that's a topic for another conversation. Some other examples of this ecosystem principle is Uber, or maybe even a better example would be Turo. Glenn, you and I were talking about it just a minute ago. So Turo provides car owners with the ability to rent their car out to anyone, right? So if your car is only used on the weekends, like a lot of people work from home nowadays, and so they don't have full use of their vehicles, right? So it's an underutilized resource. You spend a lot of money on buying the vehicle. Of course, it depreciates every year. You've got insurance to pay and all this stuff. Why not rent it out, right? And so people are again, it's a niche, it's a marginal sort of between ecosystems, if you will, the car rental industry and then, the typical, you go to a car, like Enterprise or whatever, rent your car, or you go to, you can, just flag a ride from Uber if you don't want to rent a car, or you can get a Turo, get your car of choice. You can get a sports car from Turo.
You can get anything on Turo. I looked up a 1990 Toyota Tercel was $10 a day. You have to pay insurance on top of that, but anything and everything's there, from a 20-year-old small car up to a Ferrari. It's like Airbnb for cars.
Exactly. Of course, this is not an ad for M-Pesa or Turo or Tesla. This is just sort of to give you some examples of how this works in the real world. This ecosystem thinking principle of capturing underserved markets and spaces between market segments. And that's what the innovative companies are doing all the time, trying to figure out, okay, what is it that I can do that as a company that differentiates me from anyone else, where no one is playing currently, where people haven't even thought that a market can exist. But when they do it, then the market comes and they're like, oh my God, why didn't we ever think about this before? This is great. I love it.
Yep.
Right. And so that's what this is about. And permaculture inspired this principle. Of course, there's inspiration drawn from it. But this existed before, permaculture. Anything to add, or would you like to go on to principle 12, ecosystem? Sorry, not ecosystem, but permaculture principle number 12.
I'll just throw two really quick examples. I think you alluded to it. Uber, the folks who developed Uber were sitting in France waiting for a taxi, and they couldn't get a taxi, and they thought of the idea for Uber. And the other one we also mentioned earlier was SpaceX with their reusable rockets. Now that they're out there, why would anybody not reuse a rocket? Yet for 50 years we never did. Now it just seems like the height of stupidity. But 10 years ago, nobody had done it before.
Right. It's interesting you say that. I was talking to this gentleman this afternoon who used to work for the Apollo program for NASA. He was a rocket scientist, and he was saying later in his career, when SpaceX came around, NASA just kind of scoffed at the idea. What? A reusable rocket? There's no way that'll ever work. It's never going to happen. But here we are, right? And I don't know when the first reusable rocket was launched and proven, but it's routine. Falcon 9s take off just about every week, maybe multiple times a week, and land safely. There are many of these rockets that have been used 10, 15, 20 times. I don't know what their lifespan is, how many launchings they can withstand before they're scrapped or recycled or whatever they do with them. But it's really amazing where rocket technology has come to, right? And now it's kind of the standard. Other companies are doing the same thing that SpaceX is doing.
I don't think anybody else is reusing rockets, though.
What about Blue Origin or whatever the Bezos company is?
Don't know how far, I'm not on top of them.
Not either.
Maybe they're trying to, but I don't think they have yet. But here's the other thing. You're throwing away the rocket. That's serious money. So the cost of sending a pound to space has dropped dramatically as a result of reusing the rocket. Of course, you have to replace it with fuel and everything, but this has a dramatic effect on costs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's move to Principle 12, which is a little simpler, I think, for most of us to understand. I'm just going to read it out. This is Permaculture Principle. Creatively use and respond to change. And the subheading is, I like this one, another Chinese fortune cookie type thing. Vision is not seeing things as they are, but as they will be. Almost Yoda-like, except you have to change it to the word order a little bit to be more like Yoda. So what is your interpretation of that, Glenn?
Well, as a Canadian, we're kind of into hockey, and there's a quote from Wayne Gretzky: "I don't skate to where the puck is, but where it's going to be."
Oh, okay. I like that, eh?
There's a principle in Agile we welcome. It was one of the Agile principles: welcome change and requirements, even late in the development cycle of a product. And that's important, and that's very, very key. Don't push. Oh, we're almost finished, I don't want to make any changes. Don't do that. But what we don't do is adapt organizational change. We stick with the same organizational structure.
Right.
I'm getting into the ecosystem principle here, but that really resonated with me. We don't do that. We stick with the same organizational pattern, because of an organizational pattern, and at the core, and we just tinker with change. We only allow change on the periphery. That's not good. You need to go and welcome change up and down all across the ecosystem.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at, and I totally agree. One of the other similarities between these principles, both the permaculture and the ecosystem, and I should read the ecosystem principle as well, just so all of you have it. And what it says is, evolve to embrace change, continuously adapt your organization structures to changing market conditions and opportunities for new growth. So it's kind of what you were talking about, Glenn. It's really applying an ecosystem thinking or systems thinking approach to how your organization is structured, so that it is more nimble, more resilient, more adaptable, more able to change in the face of whatever is in the market.
Yep.
Right. And so, that's similar, of course, to the permaculture principle, which natural systems are constantly evolving.
Exactly.
And actually, we're causing a lot of that evolution, if you will, us humans, to where we're really stressing the ability of natural systems to adapt to the changes that we are responsible for, I guess, to a certain extent, to a large extent. But again, that's another topic for another day, perhaps. I would also say that they both of these principles make a link between observing systems as a whole. So I think as humans, we understand the environment, the natural environment, much better than we did 50 years ago, 100 years ago. It hasn't stopped us from doing what we do, but at least we understand it better, right? And that kind of thinking has enabled us to structure organizations to better respond to those types of changes. Not always. Many organizations are kind of stuck in the old ways, right? But the ones that are able to adapt are able to thrive, and so on. You have a quizzical look.
I think there's an interesting point that you're making. Ecosystems are very resilient and very powerful and very adaptable up to a point.
Yeah.
And you push it beyond that point, they will collapse. And we see ecosystems in the natural world collapsing today. But I submit that this is also true of an organization. They can take a certain amount of change. They can be resilient in a certain way. If they're organized as an ecosystem, they'll be very resilient. But if there's too much change, even an organization will collapse.
I wasn't thinking that, maybe not consciously, but subconsciously. That's kind of my understanding, is that there is a breaking point for every system.
Yep.
And have we reached that in the natural system, the natural world we live in? Don't know. Scientists don't know, right? They're saying it could be 10 years, it could be 50 years before the currents in the ocean stop and things go haywire, cataclysmic.
We are not going down a good path there. But
we're not. So we'll switch gears. Where was I? But businesses, organizations are the same way, right? So there's a breaking point where whatever adaptability and resiliency that they have to adapt, to change to whatever the market conditions are, when they're stressed, if those organizations don't adapt or aren't able to change fast enough, they will break. And so the idea is to build in enough resiliency within our organizational structures so that we don't break, right? We're able to adapt and survive.
There's this notion of self-organizing teams, particularly with agile practitioners. But they're kind of the leaves of the organizational tree, if you will. Mm-hmm. What we need is the nodes up from the teams to also embrace change and adapt and pivot and self-organize, and possibly morph the organization into a completely new organizational structure in that particular branch. That's, I think, is what is really helpful when you have these broad systemic market changes. And that's, I think, where a lot of organizations have an opportunity to do better.
Yeah. I mean, some examples in the real world, Netflix, great example, right? Adapting from DVDs that are mailed to customers from that model to streaming. And they were sort of the pioneers of the whole streaming industry. And they, again, Principle 11, they exploited a niche between business ecosystems, right? Blockbuster was the reigning king. You have to go and rent a DVD or tape, whatever, go home, watch it. If you don't return it in time, then a lot of the revenue that Blockbuster made was through the late fees that they collected. And Netflix, they said, we don't care. Keep it as long as you want, but you can only get 3 DVDs a month, right? And that basically killed Blockbuster's revenue. It's like, oh my God, I can keep this. I can watch it again and again. I can keep it for a month or 2 months or 3 months. Awesome.
Well, you pay $5 a month, but actually that's a fabulous example, and that's how Netflix got started. And you would have thought, my goodness, now streaming is a thing. Oh my gosh, that's going to wipe out Netflix. But no, Netflix pivoted, and of course they're still the king of streaming. But something that fascinated me is they still maintained their DVD business, and it was actually quite profitable. I think they shut it down last year, but it was actually profitable. People were still sending stuff back and forth through the mail. So they resized it and pivoted. Obviously, they weren't putting as much resources and capacity into it, but it was still profitable until very, very recently.
Yeah, I was one of those people that still got DVDs in the mail. And there's something nice about getting the movie in the mail and opening it up. Like, the excitement of, we got something new to watch, and popping into the DVD player and sitting down and watching a movie. There's something about that is just different from serving it up from the internet, and choosing a movie. The choice is already made. You've already made the choice. It's in your mailbox. And now you don't have to choose. You just put it in your DVD and you hit play. So I wonder if maybe, I don't know, maybe there are people like me, I guess, that would like that back. I don't know, but there may be others like that.
The other thing is with the DVD rental, you can get literally anything. All Netflix has to do is go out and buy the DVD. They're quite restricted on what they can stream, though.
Yeah, that's true. Any other business examples that you can think of? Oh, let me put you back in the hot seat here.
No, Netflix is a really good example. That was a great one.
What about Amazon? How do you think Amazon?
Perfect.
evolves?
Thank you. That's a perfect example. You're setting me up there. Amazon originally started out as a bookseller. It was obvious step to branch out into movies and other forms of media. But they went, of course, we all know they went all out, and they now sell absolutely anything. And they let other people go and sell stuff on their site through the Amazon marketplace. They even let people store stuff in their warehouse for Amazon to go and deliver, with free delivery, I might add. But Amazon is actually a great example here. They developed their large computer infrastructure. They had to grow very, very quickly. They did it successfully. And then they went to the folks behind that, went to Jeff Bezos and said, you know what, why don't we go and make this a general service and rent it out to everybody? And the result is Amazon Web Services. And Amazon Web Services has actually made more money at various points than the Amazon store itself. So this is a massive, massive success. And again, it shows the creative thinking out of the box, having open-minded management that allows you to diversify. And it's been a phenomenal success.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon is probably exemplifies this principle just as well as any company I can think of. Evolve to embrace change, continuously adapt your organization structures to changing market conditions and opportunities for new growth. I can't think of really a better example than Amazon. I mean, to your point, I mean, AWS, Amazon in the cloud business, and of course now they're the biggest cloud provider in the entire world. Yeah, it's pretty mind-boggling. There's other examples. I'm sure there's plenty of examples of companies that have adapted and thrived throughout the past couple of decades. I mean, one that comes to mind that maybe people wouldn't think of is Domino's Pizza, right? They were created, I don't know, however, 20, 30 years ago. And their whole premise, their whole reason for being was cheap, fast pizza close to college campuses. So college kids can phone and get a pizza delivered hot, fresh, tasty, I guess, for college kids that are half drunk, maybe tasty. And that core reason for being never changed over the years, except that technology did over the years. Now you can order whatever on on your phone and get it delivered. You don't even have to order. You can just have your order sort of determined in the Domino's app and just press a button. When you get home, your pizza's there, maybe a few minutes after you are. And so you've got dinner served, dinner of pizza or whatever, sandwiches. They have other things now. But the formula worked, and it still works today. I mean, I wouldn't consider it good pizza, but if you're just interested in, getting filling your belly, I suppose, they have been very successful over the last 20 years of adapting to changing market conditions, changing trends, and so on and so forth to still serve a market and take advantage of it. Thoughts?
I hadn't thought of pizza delivery as an example, but certainly things have changed. There's examples of companies that did not change. Nokia and Kodak are some infamous examples. So this is serious stuff. When things change, you have got to go and respond to the change. And if you fight it, try to hold on to what you had before, it's not going to end well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we have a wrap. We're about 20 some minutes in. We try to keep these to about 20 some minutes. And so this is a good enough time to stop. I think these two principles are fairly easy to understand. And there's certainly plenty of examples of companies out there that follow them, that, maybe they don't know these principles, but they just kind of operate this way. And the whole idea behind the 12 ecosystem principles, I'll include a link in the show notes to where you can find them, is to think about how your organization is structured. And if these principles any one or two or three or four of them don't apply, then what would it take to apply these types of principles and this type of thinking really to the organization that you're in, and improve it, right? Have it run better, work better, be more adaptable, be more resilient. Again, all of these things are just to help survive the changes that we are seeing in today's world, changes that are coming faster, quicker, unanticipated changes that force us to really be more and more adaptable. Any parting thoughts, Glenn, as we close out this part of our series?
I would say not survive, but thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this era, of disruption, and I think that these principles all are about that, are about how do you embrace it for competitive advantage. These ecosystem thinking principles, the permaculture principles, are a great reference to how natural systems can work for the production of food in a more sustainable way, and really applying those to business systems makes a lot of sense, right? Because we want our businesses to be sustainable, to produce things of value that people consume, and do so in a way that's sustainable for the long term. Anything else to add, Glenn, before we sign off?
We're in a new world. Just there's a lot of disruption, but if you pay attention, you can be very successful.
Yep. So we will be coming back in a month with a new spin on something else XSCALE related. We don't know what it is yet, but rest assured, we hope it will be interesting to all of you. So thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see you in about a month. Bye-bye.